me a little bit more about what your faith means to you.
I've been an Orthodox Jew all my life. I live in an Orthodox community. Teaneck is something like 60% Jewish or something.
Yeah.
So a lot of Jews. I've gone to Orthodox Jewish day school for the last 14 years. And will continue to do so until I go to college. It's just an integral part of who I am. I remember thinking once, like, which would you pick, being gay or being Orthodox? And it's like, I can't choose. Like, pick between your parents.
Yeah.
Like, you can't choose that. They're just two incredibly important parts of my being, and like I would make different jokes if I wasn't Orthodox, and I would speak differently and use different lingo and have different cultural references and not know all the text knowledge that, like, a lot of text knowledge that I have, and I'd just be a totally different person. Even though it might have a grain of truth, it does frustrate me when people equate religion to homophobia, just because I'm a very deeply religious person, and the idea that, like, people just write it off and they're like, oh, it's all homophobia anyway, like read the text, like, get to know the text, understand the time people were living in, understand the context in which they were speaking, and then maybe you can judge a little better instead of just writing it all off as just like, oh, it's all just homophobic.
Yeah. So when did you first start identifying as queer?
I first thought that something was wrong with me for a while. It's not something that's often talked about in the Orthodox Jewish community, or if it is, it's regarded as a tangential topic, something that's for another time. And I think I knew something was wrong with me when I was I thought something was wrong with me when I was about 12 years old. And I looked into my best friend's eyes, and he's a boy. He has very pretty eyes. And I remember looking at him, I remember thinking, just like him, like, you should like him, like, he's everything to you, you like him already. And I realized I just didn't, and if I couldn't like him, I'm not gonna like any other boy. So I started using the words, I used the word asexual for a little while before I realized that wasn't accurate. I used the word gay for a long time, and I still use that label. I use the word lesbian, and I still use that label, and I use the word queer pretty recently.
Let's deal with another label that you used, writer.
I find it very cathartic. It's something that I tend to process things through poetry a few months later after they happen, or immediately after they happen. I think, like, if I dated someone recently and I immediately processed it through poetry, process that breakup through poetry, and then things like that are just like a different, I do a lot of therapy, and it's like a different kind of therapy.
So yeah, you talked about identifying as queer, and at first there was some confusion and maybe shame. Yeah. Is that something that you've been able to work through or talk about, think about in your writing?
Yeah, definitely. I write a lot about being queer and how that affects me personally and communally, and the way that I feel obligated to my community and to God and things like that. And I think that working through that through poetry has been very helpful and very cathartic. And it's really interesting, I think, having my work be very public. And, like, even doing this is very public.
Yeah, it is.
It's very strange. A little bit like writing about sort of this thing that when you were 12 years old you thought you would never tell anyone and you'll never share and only you'll know about it. And then I shared it in front of 1,500 people at the Apollo Theater, and I was like, great, now 1,500 people know I'm gay. Yeah. Cool. Which is, like, super weird, and, like, eventually a lot of my poetry is essentially outing myself to virtual strangers all the time. Wow. Which is very scary.
What kind of responses do you get?
In my school, I go to a Jewish day school called yeshiva. I mean, it's not called yeshiva, but it happens to be called a yeshiva. And we have a league within other yeshivas of poetry, which is actually really great and really, like, amazing. But so with that, there's a lot of, it's a bit more of a sheltered community, and I think the response I get are very different from the response I get at, like, Urban Word and other places like that. Like, I tend to get a lot of, like, at Urban Word, it's a lot of, like, wow, I'm gay too, like, that was great, I love it. And then at, like Yeshiva Poetry Slams, there's a lot more of, like, oh, I can never relate to that, but, like, that's really great. And, like, it's really supportive, but it's very much a different community in terms of, like, people willing to out themselves to people they don't know, or people willing to say that inspired me. And I've had people tell me, like, I'm queer too, that really resonated with me, but only in private in yeshiva communities, only over text or Facebook, or never in public.
And maybe we should explain for the audience at home, what is Urban Word?
Urban Word is a youth literacy organization that does a lot of education regarding literacy, poetry, hip-hop, and just lots of other amazing things. And they work with middle schools and high schools and different foundations and grants, and they do something called Slam Season, which is preliminaries, semifinals, and finals, and And they have a team that represents New York in the Brave New Voices Slam every year.
So what about in your own family too?
My parents took a little while to come around, but they're totally supportive now, which is amazing. I'm very thankful for them. It took them about 2 years to sort of get around the surprise and shock of, like, I'm their only child, so it's a little bit strange, and I think I showed a lot of signs, but whatever. I was like the gayest child. But apparently not. My extended family, one side of my family, I actually just came out to like 2 weeks ago.
Oh wow.
Like my mom's side of the family, they're all older than I am. They're all very supportive and very like, that's great for you, and we're all very happy.
Great.
The other side of my family is very religious, and I have not come out to them, and they will hopefully never see this.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
yeah, that's you strike me as someone who's really bold, who...
Thank you.
Yeah, who, despite... I mean, it's interesting. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about it, but you've talked about feeling bad or wrong, and yet you're not hiding at all.
Yeah.
How do you get around that?
I just don't think it's worth it. I think there are so many queer kids in yeshiva, in the Jewish world, that just aren't out and don't feel like they can be out. And I'm like, if I can be out and show people that it's okay, and like, I mean, there are kids who have been kicked out of their schools and their homes and their entire communities, and obviously not being out is not okay for everybody, and it is not an option for everybody. Like, it's very much, like, I'm very much aware of that, especially the more far right you go, both politically and religiously. But in my community, being out is mostly an okay thing to do, and if I can show kids in my community that is an okay, acceptable option, then I'm totally gonna do that.
Wow. So do you feel like you have sort of a responsibility, or maybe a special opportunity to
I think it's like an opportunity. If I can, I don't know about responsibility. I don't feel very responsible for other people, but I think I just definitely feel like we say like a bracha, a blessing. It's definitely a blessing to be able to be out and proud about it, and to show other kids that like it's gonna be okay.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of First Person. If you have questions about anything about Odelia or poetry, you can comment below or follow First Person PBS on social media. And you can find out more about Urban Word by going to urbanwordnyc.org. One more time?
urbanwordnyc.org.
Awesome.
It's an amazing website and an amazing organization.
That's great. And subscribe to the YouTube channel right now. Do it now.